Hi everyone, thanks for joining us tonight. We're really excited to have you for our panel where we'll be talking a little bit about the art community in Austin, featuring 5 panelists who come from a lot of different art backgrounds and representation across Austin. I'm particularly excited about this panel because, as you may have noticed, it is animated, and we thought it would be a nice step away from the traditional Zoom gallery view, and it presented a fun opportunity to design characters together and bring them to life. One thing to keep in mind going in is this panel was recorded a couple weeks ago, so before the election and before the kickoff of the tours. Given that, we're going to dive into a great set of questions that actually were inspired from a recent survey conducted across a bunch of artists in Austin, asking them how they'd like to see the art community improve. And our plan for this panel is to continue the dialogue with everybody watching tonight. We ask that you write comments as we go along, and we plan to take all of the conversation that comes from this after the panel concludes and use it to help inform some of our initiatives coming up for the art community. Tonight's event is hosted at Fake Venue Austin. If you're interested in booking future events here, please let me know. We've got our lovely bats that are helping with stage assistance and props. And my name is Kayla Lewis. I'll be the moderator tonight, and I am the animator of the panel itself. I'm an artist and researcher here in Austin, and I'm really interested in learning more about the art community and helping Big Medium and other initiatives figure out ways that we can continue to support and grow in the community. Hence the panel tonight. Okay, now let's move on to panelist introductions. So for each of you, I ask that you state your name, give a little bit of background on your art, list a piece that you would like to be known for if you could only choose one piece or one project, and tell us a little bit about what your studio tour experience is like. So let's start with Katie.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Katie Lewis. I kind of do a lot of things. I don't know. I just started doing art like last year, like as a business and everything. So yeah, mostly last year was doing a bunch of different like art markets with like selling prints and like learning to screen print and make products. And this year I've kind of transitioned to becoming more of like a muralist and like a oil painter and stuff. So I'm doing a lot of things. But I think if I was known for one thing as of right now, I think it would be like the one line drawings that I make digitally. Yeah, I think that definitely helped me get my like foot in like the art community, especially with like markets and stuff like that. But yeah, and then you can best access my studio experience just on my website, which is going to be katielewis.com. Yeah, I think I'm going to try doing like a virtual gallery situation. I still have to figure it out. But yeah, it's kind of like how like apartment tour, like 3D videos have been, like where you can walk in the room virtually or whatever and kind of maneuver your way with your mouse and pretend like you're in a real apartment or like art gallery, let's say. And yeah, so that's my plan as of right now, but I don't really know. I'm winging a lot of this year. So yeah, we'll see. I'll update you guys.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Katie, part of what struck me when I was looking through different artists' work was how you were like, I decided in the last year to become an artist. So I was like, all right, we're gonna use Katie for our panel. It seems like it's been working out for you pretty well.
Oh yes, we're going. We're figuring it out through this year, but yeah.
Okay, let's do Raul next.
Hi everyone. My name is Raul Delara. and I'm a sculptor. I moved to Austin in 2004 from Mexico, and I went to the University of Texas at Austin for my undergrad, and then right after that moved away for like 5 years. I was in Chicago, Richmond, Provincetown, Michigan for a little bit, and now I'm back here. I've been here since June, and I primarily work with wood as my medium. I've been doing this since I was a little kid, and if there's one project or sculpture or that I would be known for, I think I would like it to be my storytelling qualities. Almost every sculpture that I make has a story behind it, and I'm right now in the process of writing out the works and making them accessible to people, because I think that's a big part of the conversation that's missing in my work. The access to the not even where the inspiration comes from for the works, but where my mind and my world is, and how these live within me. I have a limited studio space right now. I'm in transition of moving studios, so for me it will be I'll be uploading a bunch of images of my process, of my studio tools that I make. I always end up making all kinds of like strange carving rooms or like jigs to like make things work, or like long trips to places to get materials or things like that. So I think I'm gonna be providing photographs of all those trips and journeys and ways of working.
Okay, so you're starting to tell those stories.
Yep.
All right, let's do Selena next.
Hi, I'm Selena Zisman, and I actually work in arts admin and business strategy for artists. So took my background in small business and then applied it to my creative community. And I've been doing that for about 5 years now, just working one-on-one. And I would say that I want to be known while I'm not making art. I am curating a show, an annual show for the Austin Studio Tour. This will be our 5th year. And it's a show that really merges my interests, my specific areas of interest in the art world, which is craft, metalsmiths, furniture makers, ceramicists, people that have mastered their medium. And just bossing people around while I do that. So it tends to be that the artists that I pull in for those shows are either previous clients of mine or people that I would love to work with. And so it's a lot of collaboration, putting that on. And this year that'll just be virtual through our website. We're hoping to put together a sort of an editorial spread. So I usually host a house show where we clear out everything and turn our living room and dining room into a gallery space and open it up to the public. And this year we've switched things around. We're installing work all over the house and just trying to give people a feel for what the work could look like in their home, which hopefully will empower them to support the artists that are participating. But it's definitely been an interesting year. And I'm here to be a resource and to be as helpful as I can to my artists who are small businesses, whether they like it or not.
I'm just going to say, Selena, I looked all of you up extensively online, just putting that out there. But I saw your Google reviews, and one was, working with Selena is like meeting that sensible voice in the back of your head, live and in person. I loved it. I took years of giving unsolicited advice and turned it into my career. So it's been great. That's awesome. It's a great business approach. All right, Keith.
Hi, I'm Keith Krieger. I'm a studio potter. I've been in Austin since 2009. I've been taking part in the tour since then. I was on Cape Cod, Massachusetts before that with my studio. I'm a past president of Big Medium, so I've been involved since they welcomed me. And my studio's at Canopy, so I've always been sort of at the epicenter of chaos of parking and people at the tour. So this year's definitely different. I'm going to be doing some very lo-fi videos, both on YouTube and Instagram, and trying to figure out how to make it fun and keep it going. My work is probably best known for the work I do with restaurants. So in the pre-COVID times, everyone was dining out, and whether you knew it or not, you were interacting with my work across town. Now, a little bit different, obviously, and my I guess business model has changed slightly, but I'm still making pots and still trying to figure out ways to get people to use them and connect over a table.
That is great. Okay, last but not least, Laura.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura Oxendine. I am a video editor, motion designer, and so my whole world is digital. I've been a freelancer for quite a while now, and so it's been a curious process to have already worked from home for years and communicated with a lot of my clients and my whether that be on my art side or the professional side over email, and some I haven't even met in person, but I've had email conversations with for years. And then to now be in COVID times, there's not much has changed for my digital space, but it's an interesting shift for a lot of people too. So I feel like I can be a support in that way too, of being like, it's okay, you can do it. So like I mentioned, I freelance. So I work as a creative professional, as a video editor and a post-production producer, professionally as Throne Light, and then also have my personal work as well. The piece that I think that I would like to be most known for is a video called Pair Bonding. So this is a purely abstract piece, but what I like so much about it and why I think I would like to be known for it is it's using abstraction, which has been a through line on all of my work, but then using abstraction plus movement and shape to just have these little hints of organic movement. So it's like purely digital tools, but also trying to hint at something that may exist in some other world somewhere. So this piece reminds me of a little creature like floating in space. Best Access, my tour. This is my first studio tour with Big Medium. And since it's virtual and since most of my work is video, I was going to have the platform on Big Media's platform as a website and have the videos loop continuously for people to check out, and also push things over my Throne Light Instagram.
In my experience, like looking through work, a lot of people do more, I don't know, like sculpture, painting, and that was a lot of the work I was going through. And then there was Laura's work. So very more like, I would say, like new media, which is something in my experience, there's not a ton of in Austin, but we'll probably touch on that in the questions to come. But thank you for your intros. Those were amazing. It's so cool to hear about your work and what you'd like to be known for. Okay, so now we're just going to dive into the different questions that came up. Again, these are just trends that came out of the survey responses. So a bunch of themes surfaced, and a big one was this feeling of an absence of collectors of art made in Austin. This was by far the most common theme. People don't feel supported in their art, and they feel like collectors intentionally seek work outside of Austin. So I'm curious, in your experience, why don't local collectors invest in local art, or why do artists feel this to be true?
I guess I'll kick off a little bit here. I think, there is some lines that need to be drawn a little bit when we talk about like the support of art, because I think that while I do agree with that statement and that sentiment, especially for people that are in the fine art sector and are selling works that are, in the $1,000+ range, I do feel like I want to give my community credit for showing up and putting the effort into supporting local businesses. Katie, I know I've seen you at Frida Friday. We have markets like Craft Her and Blue Genie that really do push for supporting our local artists. Now, that is a completely different scale when we're talking about, fine art like LA, SF, Chicago, New York. But I do think that the markets and the organizers that we have out there right now do a great job of getting out in front of our community and really encouraging the shoppers to come out. And yeah, they maybe can't spend, $500 on a large scale piece, but they can, that next tier down and those products and in ways that they can support by following and liking. I think people do their darndest when it comes to that. And there is a motivation to support local artists.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And I think my work falls kind of within that scale. I'm on the more expensive side, kind of within the ceramics field in town. But I've had support since I first opened the doors during East in 2009. And I think for me, the thing about East is you never know who's walking through the door. The way it is, it's on a Sunday. It could be a group of people in their sweatpants, and you have no clue whether they're art collectors or not. And you have no clue what homes they live in. You have no clue anything on all sides of the demographic scale. And I think that's what makes it special. And that's what makes Austin special, is that you are able to interact and connect and sell to people across the spectrum. And I think just focusing on that, when Austin doesn't get the support on the higher end, leaves out a whole lot of what it does do.
That's a curious point too, because I feel like often seeds that I'll plant today won't grow until like 3 years from now.
Absolutely.
And so the support that I see, and for me personally, I straddle fine art and commercialism like quite directly. So I'm constantly and personally trying to bring those worlds together. And it's really curious to have a commercial client be interested in working with me on a professional level. And then just through the working process and working through what they need, we start having just human conversations about our lives. And then, I am also, personal. This is the personal work I do too. And then there's a crossover. So it's just communication. Any ways to foster communication, I think, is a really positive outlook on that question.
Yeah, I'll jump back in and just say communication and relationships. I think that long-term idea is key. I think maybe 2012, I did a pop-up at By George on North Lamar, so super high-end clothing. My work felt like, I'll take the socks with this, with this $5,000 dress. But the people coming through there were multiple people who were like, oh, I've been to your studio during East. And again, it just goes to that point of you have to put yourself in all these different places, because the place that might be the traditional way of selling work is not there anymore, or has changed and evolved and grown. So there are all sorts of ways to connect with collectors and art lovers here in Austin. And it's not necessarily what we're told is the right way to do it.
So maybe part of the issue is just a lack of awareness amongst some artists of how to get themselves out there and where these opportunities lie within Austin. So another thing that came up was this idea of brokerage. So they bring up Big Medium's artist registry, for example, and ways that we could expand on that or a similar concept to help make these connections and generate more awareness. So in your experience, what are more ways that we could do that, or what are more ideas around how we can build these kinds of brokerages?
We've got a lot of these giants, industry giants coming in. We've got Facebook downtown, we've got Google, we've got Visa, we've got Apple, Oracle, and it feels like more and more every day. And I think that some of these businesses that, are seeing the value of being in our town, seeing the creative communities thrive and our musicians and being weird, we have a draw. And I think Facebook's doing a great job. They have that artist in residency program. They're really making an effort to bring in local artists to do installations and sort of take over walkways and walls. But I think if we saw more of that from these businesses, I don't know that we need to go as far as to say that we need to incentivize that and say, hey, if you're coming here, pinky swear, you're going to bring in artists to do this. But I think if we had more leadership from those that do have the disposable income to support the local communities in any way, shape, or form that they could, that does kind of fall down the ranks. And then all the employees that have relocated from small town wherever that are now here, they're seeing it demonstrated that there is a value in supporting the local community and leveraging that exposure in that way. Do we hold our breath for those opportunities? No. We do need to sort of take it upon ourselves to think outside the box and get creative. I think it is hard to exist solely in the white box right now as an artist. And that white box is now a digital white box, right? But something that I've talked about with clients is like, okay, you're a ceramicist, you make big wall pieces. Where can you get your work that isn't a gallery, that isn't just a retail shop, but that's going to put you in front of people that are maybe also buying big ticket items? So doing pop-ups at other retail stores, who sells couches? You always need beautiful art above your couch, right? Go make a relationship with a store owner, a small business, somebody else who's not doing the big box stuff and make those connections and relationships to get in front of people that you would normally never be in front of, that have never stepped foot in a gallery, but appreciate and can learn to understand what it's like to be a support system for the local creative community. It's not all, the Blanton and Laguna Gloria. It is like you and me here out in the streets, slinging our wares and trying to make a career out of it. So it does take pushing ourselves outside of that comfort zone and to be our own brokers, because a directory can only get you so far. And is it a fine art directory or is it a craft directory? Is it makers of color? Is it women forwards? I think those things are all really important right now. And people are trying to prioritize supporting as the diversity of Austin.
I don't want to sound like I'm down on tech and moving here, but I'm wary of it in the sense that it's a closed circuit system where, like, the things I've got invited to do would be to go up to their office and bring a table of work and sell it like a craft fair kind of thing. And for me, that's not what I'm interested in. I would want to create an ecosystem where they're going to leave their place and they're going to interact with the town, and they're going to leave the cafeterias where they have their food so that they can keep coding or making their sales calls all day and be part of the community, as opposed to us reaching out to them and going to be part of their community. I think when I moved here, what I noticed was Austin will welcome you with complete open arms if you are here to do work with Austin. But if you come in because you have an idea that Austin needs and you're going to do something for Austin, people don't care. We read through that really quickly. So that's sort of my concern. I know I'm rambling off, I guess, the original topic, but going, just talking about where we're growing as a city, making sure that keeping touch with the creative community is part of that growth. And that's huge.
So given now COVID, less opportunity to actually be in physical spaces, what are ways that you think or hope that tech companies can maybe redeem themselves, given their expertise in all things virtual, in helping elevate and work along with the art community?
I have not personal, but experiences with some of the tech companies who have been moving here, and one particular, and I'm not gonna name names, but it is a really big company, and when you hear these opportunities, you're any artist, because I'm speaking at least for muralists, you jump on that, right? And I spend a lot of time cold emailing people and stuff like that, doing outreach or whatever. So then when, let's say, this tech company had reached out to a lot of Austin muralists, and we're all very local, and murals are everywhere, right? So the mural community is really tight too. Like we all know who's painting what, and like we're helping each other out. And then it's just interesting because, you know, this big opportunity comes in and they're kind of, you know, they have a lot of money to like hire all these people, right? And like recruit all of these local talents. And that felt like what the vibe was like when all of us got these emails from this company. And it happens a lot actually. So I'll just say that too. And, you know, like they get us doing like the runaround of, you know, like looking or having us like make designs or whatever for their specific walls of the building that they're moving into. And they have multiple artists doing this and convincing us that like, you know, there's a billion projects in their space and whatever. And then they end up just dropping all of us. And it was kind of problematic to begin with because you should kind of know if you're reaching out to an artist, you should know by their portfolio if you think that's a good fit or not. Like no one should be doing design work for you for free, stuff like that. So even like the way that this big company approached the situation, I as like a really not small but like a very new artist, you know, it's hard to say no to something so big, even though you're like, this, you know, this could hurt the industry, but it's like what else, you know, it's a huge opportunity. But then, you know, the tech companies kind of end up going and hiring someone from New York, you know, so it's like to do like the one big job, right? And so that was an example. It's crazy how you guys brought that up because looking back on it, and it was during coronavirus and everything, and I was like, I knew in the back of my mind, like, that's not cool, right? Because Austin, you get the impression, like, even local small businesses here will pay, like, they respect the art community that is here, and they're really, if they're reaching out to an artist, like, they know what they're about, like, they're not asking to do anything, like, out of their comfort zone. And if they are, like, I feel like people in Austin are willing to open the conversation and be like, hey, like, this is the standard, like, this is the industry's, you know, this is what it is, versus like the tech companies there, you know, I don't know. I thought that was a weird experience, but honestly, after that situation and talking to other muralists in the community, they're like, yeah, this happened with this big company, that happened with this big company, and with even bigger projects of a even higher price tag, right?
Yeah, if I could just throw in, and that's what I love about Big Medium and East, is that when the more things that I do that are artist run, or that we create I used the word ecosystem before, but when we create the platform that people interact with us and then create the rules for how we want to interact with other people, I think we're in a better position. I think as artists and small businesses here in town, we have a lot of economic power. It's just spread out among so many different studios. And demanding that we get the respect of what we are is important. And that is a long-term play, and it is a long-term emotional roller coaster ride to put yourself on. But it always pays off, or it has always paid off for me when I don't rush through wanting to do something. For me, in COVID times, I don't have a crew in the studio right now, and I did have 4 people helping me before. So it's resetting the rules. It's here's what I can make. This is how many pieces I can make. This is what I am willing to work on. And if you're willing to play those rules and you really want my work, let's do that. But if you're going to show me work from other people, or you want something that's just not realistic in this time frame or this time period, it's thanks, but no thanks. And it's saying no is super hard. At whatever point of the career you're at, your career that you're at, but it opens up so much more. So saying no opens up the ability to do what you want to do and grow that channel or that process or whatever.
Raul, I was going to ask you. I mean, you have experience in different cities, and how have you felt, or where have you felt the most supported in Austin, and how would you compare that to support you felt in other places that you've lived?
Yeah, so to start, I I primarily show in galleries, so that's been like kind of like more like the realm I've been taking, and I've had the chance and opportunity to be able to show in Austin quite a bit. I think the first time I showed during East was 2011, and then I've shown galleries like in like Prize Gallery. My buddy had a gallery on Second Street for a few years, and I was there. It was the time that I was at UT Austin, and right after. And I think in Austin, I've had the support has looked or has the shape of opportunities to show work, but it hasn't had the shape of like financial support. For me, my studio practice is kind of expensive to keep up with. Primarily because I have like a bunch of like big power tools, and you know, you kind of like I need like a specific kind of studio space to be doing this kind of noise and like dust. You know, it's not just like whittling around for me. Like I wish it was less noisy, but I can't. You know, I've tried. Like and I find that there's been conversation today about like kind of like bridging that gap of these like people that show making like all kinds of money. You know, I here in Austin with like tech specifically, I think for me it will look like how are we educating the collector in the 21st century? You know, like who is a collector and like what's the benefit of having collectors, or like what's the role of the artist in the transaction? What's the role of the artwork in the transaction? And what's the role of that person to us, right? Because like sometimes they're like great people and they want to get to know you and they want to introduce you to their friends and they're like circles and show the work or like hear the story. Like for me, you know, like bringing back the storytelling part of my practice, a lot of my work is more geared towards like political agendas on my end. Me being an undocumented person here in the country for so long, and currently there's things that I like to talk about specifically with my work. There's things that like stories and voices that like are not heard, and I want to make sure that these people are heard, or the ideas are heard. So for me, it's been difficult to find the right kind of collector that cares about that. A lot of them kind of just want to have a cool conversation over dinner about like this cool person they met, you know, this cool piece, but like it kind of has nothing to do with like the artist himself or, you know, themselves. So for me, I have found in other places, and it's not even about like city based, you know, it's like even like shown in cities like New York, there's like people that are just like ridiculous, that like don't really care about the person, they just care about the thing itself. So for me, being here in Austin is special because I have been around these people for a while. I have been around artists that I've seen grow for a while here, and to have a human connection with the person interested in your practice is as I grow older and like deeper into this practice, it means so much more than just like making the money, right? Yeah, I think being able to kind of like I don't know, I think it was Selena that said it, but being able to sort of like pinpoint like the line of like what kind of art practice you want to have and how do you want to approach that, and how are these investors, if you will, helping you sort of like shape that vision. Because for me, like my art practice is not about like the number in my bank account at all, you know, but it definitely gives me access to like a place where I can use a chainsaw for, you know, 10 hours a day without getting like evicted, you know? So it's like just kind of like balancing those things out. I think I like went into a weird place, but yeah, that's kind of like my position. There's been support here for me. It's just been more difficult to access people that, like for me, like one great aspect of the support here in Austin that I've had has been the one-on-one connection that I find like during the tours. Like obviously right now it's COVID, that's a whole different story, but people are willing and open to like hear you and, you know, experience your work and your story. But it's been hard to find like people that like want to buy the work or that see it for like a long-term sort of like investment. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So given now this virtual emphasis that is taking away from the more physical, like local connections that we once had. What opportunities or maybe disadvantages lie in trying to expand to a more like national or global reach in how you're selling? Because all of you seem pretty locally focused, but how has your experience or perspective on that changed given COVID?
Well, I have a thought that's not directly to COVID, but being someone whose portfolio is pretty much always online, and yes, some of the prints are physical objects, but they're it's been a curious thing to see how to do that, how to like compete on the national level, and also maintain energy to do so and and create work. And there's a lot of places that need energy and focus, and so it's like choosing which one takes priority is a task. Something that I would be concerned about on just a purely national level is what I fondly call gallery fatigue. So when I am going, it sort of goes without saying that I love looking at work and I love going to galleries whenever I'm in other cities. But there comes a point when I'm looking at work where I'm like, I can no longer absorb anymore. Like I am spent. And that's what I would fear about any sort of just large database of work. Yes, you can filter by medium, you can filter by, category, but even for myself, an abstract category looks very different for me than some other abstract artists. So then how do you even have subsets within filters? And then the whole thing gets just completely overwhelming as a viewer staring at a screen. And so I don't think that that's a direct, let's just put every artist, and then we end up competing against each other. And that doesn't really foster the type of collaboration that really is that support system that we all want and need. So those are a lot of the negatives. I don't know if I have an immediate, like, let's do this, but what an interesting time that we can now be forced to say, okay, what does that look like now? Like, I think it was Raul, but I'm not sure who said, like, how can we change the rules? It's time to change the database rules. Like, we're not a number. We have a lot of thoughts and interests, and, I appreciate what happened to you, Katie. I'm really sorry that happened, but that type of thing has happened to me as well. And it's that I could be interchanged, I'm interchangeable, but we're not.
It's kind of like parallel to what we're talking about, but I was going to talk about the art schools here in Austin and the kind of like education of artists and like the kind of like ideas that go into an artist's mind in Austin. I went to undergrad here. I went to grad school elsewhere in the East Coast, but like in undergraduate school, it's like taboo to talk about money in art school, even in graduate school. And like, to me, that was like super like ridiculous to think that somehow magically like pride is going to like pay your bills, and I think there's like a real kind of like responsibility from the universities, different sort of like groups that connect artists or like provide artists as like commodities or like products to people, to sort of like educate the kind of like people that we are and the kind of like connections that, or the effects of their actions, right? The effects of like being able to support somebody and what that looks like, rather than just like, thinking about it as like a money, here's the thing, here's, another thing. But yeah, it's not so much like the digital, but it's like, in a way, now that, because when I read the question in the document you sent us, I was really thinking, I was like, well, almost everything I've been awarded or like applied to has been like someone seeing a digital image of my work, grants, college, applying for like do something at a business, like, painting a mural, like all these things have even pre-COVID been through a screen. So just thinking, it would be overwhelming to have one database, but something kind of strange that I wrote here about like how can software people like come in and help us out since they're like have so much power, right? It's a strange thought, just kind of bear with me. But I was thinking about like the kind of like mechanism, like the mechanics of like dating apps, and the kind of like the optics of it, and then the kind of description side of things, and the kind of like what the person doing it wants versus what the person on the other side wants, and like the short-term effects of dating, long-terms, things like that. Or like, and then I started thinking, I was like, what if there was an app for people that are just visual and they just want to find like swipe through whatever, and just find like that cool blue thing they're looking for their kitchen. And then how about there's another app that has just texts for people who are interested in providing funds for like POC people, or like providing like support for like women exclusively, and they're and it's just an app that is just for text project based things. Or like, what if there's another app for people who are like interested in like specific kind of like real estate? Or like, I don't know if you heard about this website, but it's called The Listing Projects, and I just heard about it recently. But it's like a Craigslist for artists exclusively, and it changed my life, like looking for studios, because it's sent out once a month, and it's all like live work or rental for rooms or a studio space, but it's just for artists. The things like that Austin could sort of like become visible to the naked eye, because like I've been in and out of Austin for a while, and well, that's like unfortunate in a way because it's hard to like make the seeds grow, right, in relationships. It's also been hard because then I'm like, I come back here and the people that made Austin to me are no longer here or have moved into a different trajectory. And then I have this like big city that's apparently booming, but I can't see past its like smoke of just booming, right? So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I think that what you said about effects and, the effects you have through what you do, and the responsibilities we have, I think that relates so closely to how this goddamn pandemic, it's right. It's like we all know the effects and we all know our responsibilities and we all know the outcomes, but when you jump into the motive that's going to help you get ahead at this moment, within your career, within a project, long term, it's unhelpful. And it's unhelpful to not just yourself, but the greater creative community here. So, keeping your prices a certain way, and, making sure that you're not undercutting someone else or working for trade. There are times and places for all these things. These aren't, hard, yeses or nos within the creative community, but there is a responsibility to make sure that you're leading through your example and how you're running your business, because it is more than that. Sorry, I took some notes because there was a lot happened through that conversation there. I think the other thing we were talking, data and databases. Laura, I think you were talking about that, and I think for me, it's again, whatever I can own myself, I want to do. So I don't want to sell through Etsy. I don't want to sell through these platforms where I don't get to truly understand and truly keep whatever digital connection I have to my clients. So 2 years ago, I switched my website to Shopify, and that, changed the game for me. And it made it way easier to kind of keep my inventory. And on the base level, like if I have something in my showroom, it's in stock on my website. If I sell it in one place, it automatically switches out of the other. But the other thing is that I get that info. When I first moved here, and, Square was the easiest way to take a credit card, but I never got to keep my customers' info. And I never was able to email them directly and follow up. You have to go through the system, and it's all done anonymously through Square software. I don't know if it's still that way, but that's how it was. And that's what I noticed with Shopify, is that I'm able to keep that relationship going through emails, connect it to my social media. And, on this kind of the opportunities we have because of how we're doing the tour this year, I think there is a way to engage your clients across the country in a way that you couldn't do before. just because of the for lack of a better word, the content we're going to create to get people engaged in our work. We're able to do that in a way where it's not just the person who walks through the door. And it's going to engage people within the sitting in a different way, hopefully, because, here at Canopy, people, while it's super crowded, everyone is scared of this place because of parking, because of the chaos. And so those are the others, small but local opportunities that are opened up. So I'm cautiously optimistic that, it's a tight time frame, but we have the ability to also lengthen that time frame. It's the 2 weeks of the tour. It's no longer a Saturday and Sunday where you're competing with the weather or a kid's soccer game or a football game. So we have these longer term interactions that I'm hopeful for.
Okay. And just in listening to everybody talk and give their perspectives, it's clear that there's a spectrum of domain expertise and backgrounds and, years of experience. I'm interested in how all of you have found ways to learn and connect with other artists in your experience and time in Austin. Like, what have you found to be the most helpful way to learn what you don't know? Katie, can I pick on you?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I mean, that's another thing that's cool about Austin actually, is like the different parts of the art community that there are. Because I really started out with like the markets and like the local little like makers markets where I'm like alongside like crafters, and I'm alongside like artists who are more of like the product side and stuff like that. And I think through like even tiny sub communities like that, you get to like meet all the people who are kind of in the same space as you and whatever, and then they kind of help you connect with other people, and it keeps branching out, and then you start something new. Like I've just done a lot of pivoting, because like when you are starting out, and like I'm self-taught too, so like I didn't really, it's hard to really know where to go for your information at first, and I guess just in general, but like it was a lot of trying to get information here and there from the people I met, like who are vending right next to me, and then on Instagram it was a lot of like sliding into people's DMs and be like, hey, what's up, let's hang sometime and talk about and talk about stuff, and then I just feel like the more, I mean, for anyone who's like starting out or just looking to expand in their community and make those connections, it really is just I feel like saying yes to things and like little opportunities and events, which is it looks different, a lot different now, but just things that you might feel like are maybe like out of your comfort zone or something, and just go and show up and see what happens. And in that way, like I feel like especially in Austin, there were so many people already like in the community and just like ready to have a conversation. I think that's what the biggest thing was in Austin, because like I'm from the East Coast, and like I always grew up like a train ride away from like New York, right? And New York has a huge art scene, and like for the longest time I was like, I want to live in big, New York City, and because the art scene is booming, right? But like in Austin, there's so much, it's small enough, and I know depending on like what kind of artist you are, like there's pros and cons, but like people, when there's like an art talk, let's say, people come and they show up and they're like willing to listen, and they're not I think like someone had said earlier, like they're not just there, they don't really care about like the artist or whatever, they want to talk to you. At least in Austin, that was my experience. And yeah, whether it was like a maker's market or doing East for the first time last year, where like my whole display was all over the place. Like I had a billion different kinds of like styles and stuff going on, but people who I literally didn't know, and these were people who went to like art schools that I could only like dream about, and like people who were collectors, and people with like money were like willing to talk to little old Katie, who really honestly like didn't really know what was going on, or like I didn't have her stuff together in her mind at that time. Like they were still willing to talk about my little like drawings and like what was in my sketchbook that I had on my table, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, I feel like now, since I've expanded like my practice a little bit, and I've branched out into the other little like sub communities of like murals, the people who do like spray painting art now is like so different from like the maker community, and then when it comes to like paintings, that's a whole other game. I feel like just reaching out and trying to make the connection, because for me it's really daunting. Like I don't have like a college degree, and like I'm talking to like professional like people, and it's really like scary, and they're all older than me, and like it's really crazy. But at the same time, once you start talking to them, you're like, it's not a big deal. Like they're willing to have the conversation, and they want to talk about art and things that are around like the creative world, and chances are too they know someone that who is also interested in this, or who saw your mural in the business that they get their hair cut in, or whatever. And it keeps surprising me.
I think that's totally true. I mean, and I moved here in 2008, and it's like when you're new in town, you've got to put yourself out there. And volunteered at an arts nonprofit, and I just tried to be out and be present. But coming from the West Coast, having spent time on the East Coast, it was like nothing I'd experienced. There is an immediate camaraderie. There's the fast friendship that comes, which is like, oh, you like that? I like that. Let's go get a beer. Let's talk about it. Oh, you're into this? I know somebody else who does that. Let me connect you. There isn't that innate competitiveness that comes with some of the other major metropolitan art scenes. Whereas, opportunities, and I know I straddle the art and music world too, so it's like, opportunities are coveted and they're kept close to the chest. It's like, well, I had to kiss this person's butt to get to this person who introduced me to this person, so you think you're just going to walk in here and I'm going to tell you all my secrets? Like, you're crazy. Whereas that's exactly how this works. It's like, well, I already did all that. I made all the wrong decisions. Let me just go ahead and line you up so that your success will build upon mine. And I think that's something that's very unique. I don't know if that's Southern hospitality. I don't know if that exists in Dallas or Houston, who also have these great art scenes, but it is so special here that there doesn't necessarily have to be a competitive edge. Yes, we're all here trying to work and make a living, but it's further together mentality that I think that really makes us, it does give us the small town vibe. Katie, I think you're totally right. I think we're the little big city that can, and I think that's really special about us. And it does take being vulnerable and saying hi, and it's introverts, come on out. And now in a digital space, you have no excuse, right? You can go out and make those asks. And I think Big Medium does a great job with the coffee chats. I was going to those in person and now digitally, but you're in a room with other people that you already have a commonality, right? You're in the same place at the same time. Reach out, sliding into the DMs. It's like, how else are you going to do that cold call? So it is really important.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to hear that you moving here 2 years ago experienced that, because that's what I experienced in 2009. And I've been here long enough to be the jaded Austinite who's like, oh, things are starting to change a little bit. These tech companies moving in are not going to do it the same way, like I ranted about earlier. But those intros are free flowing, and those, coming from New York, as you were saying, you have a favor, you hold on to it until you can call it in. And that could be 10 years from now, because it's that important. It's not as important here because the opportunities keep coming and keep coming and keep coming, because we're all working together and because we've created this community that is supportive. And that's on us to keep that going and to make the newcomers, part of it, but also make the people who aren't part of it play by that game.
Austin art community, generally friendly, seems surprisingly consistent over the years, Keith, like you mentioned. So really, I mean, those are great foundations, I think, in a community. And that makes me think of shared spaces with artists as a whole. So touching on what I listed as our final thought experiment, studio space inevitably came up a ton in this survey. And we've got obviously our COVID limitations, but another thing was just the general affordability of space and the accessibility, like where they're located, in proximity to where artists live. So I'm curious on your thoughts around like how we can optimize these spaces and how we can make sure that artists are given the space they need, given the state of the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shay, executive director of Big Medium, for years has been talking about the importance of affordability in studio space. And it's important to keep that affordable space central. It needs to be part of the core district of Austin. It can't just keep getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. I mean, so many people I know have moved out to Bastrop and Smithville and Lockhart and Elgin, and that's because of pricing. And I don't know the answer other than that I hope everyone voted however many days before this panel airs, because that's part of it. But it's holding our officials' feet to the fire. I mean, I work with a lot of restaurants, and they are, a lot. I mean, obviously, a lot of businesses are struggling, but any business that relies on people in a space is going to have the hardest time right now within the pandemic. And our city and our mayor, they're focused on developing the convention center. And while that's good long term, there's money there right now that they've budgeted for the convention center that within these next 2 years could keep businesses here and could keep businesses alive. And those are the businesses that people want to come to Austin and have their conventions for. There'll be money down the road to finish that convention center. That, there always will be for something that big. But if you aren't willing to prioritize the reasons why people come to the city to visit or to move to, it's going to be gone. And, we don't need conventioneers coming here and going to Applebee's. We need them going to every individual creative restaurant that opens. We need them going to the local mom and pop stores. And that's where, we need to demand that money gets used for. We're still struggling to save Red River in the, the music district right now. I mean, those clubs have not been able to operate and won't be for a while. So it's multifaceted. It's obviously huge. And I think, this pandemic and the response to it is going to show our priorities short term and long term. And it's also having the memory for who did what during that time. I mean, at the end of all of this, it's, did you help people and were you a good person? And that's all I care about. So, one of the first things I did when this hit early on was cancel a couple invoices for some restaurant clients. It's like, I don't want them to worry about paying plates. If they're open 10 years from now, we'll sort it out, or they'll open another place. No one is their business. So surviving as people is the most important part. You can always open another restaurant. You can always find another studio space. I know that's harder here and in this context where we're talking about affordability, but it's the long term that matters. And that's what I think we've all kept coming back to. And I'll stop rambling because I know I've dominated too much of this. So sorry.
I believe that artists will always be resourceful. We have a common tenacity to keep going, but I don't believe that, or I would hope that it's not our job to solve the problem of affordability, because we're gonna pivot no matter what. But because I was trying to think of ideas, like what could we do? And like, I don't need a traditional studio space, but I would be willing to help others or like contribute to a fund for others to have a studio space just to help support. But then I was like, wait a second, why do I have to put my funds and to help the community? I mean, it's a delicate thing. If there's some support from the city, and it's balanced, then sure, like I would love to help contribute to others having studio spaces, because eventually down the road maybe we can collaborate and do something together, and I would benefit in some other way. But to Keith's point, it's about people, like people helping people, and where the greatest needs are, who needs what, and helping those that need the most so that we all benefit.
It's a good segue. I just wanted to, I saw this question and kind of thought it was a good way to sort of remind people that there is this $12 million creative space bond out there. And while it is not a speedy process by any means, this is a proposal that has to go all the way up to our Attorney General. It is something that is still being, like, we're still surveying. I say we, I'm on the Arts Commission, so it's something that we're hearing about all the time. But we're talking, you brought up the city, Laura, and I think there is opportunity for civic engagement, and there is opportunity to be present at commission meetings, be it the Music Commission or the Arts Commission or the Downtown Commission, and to be heard by the people that are, trying to make the change, go up the ladder, up to through city council. So I will just give a shout out to speakupaustin.com. Like, for those of you that have ideas on how this can work, there's a lot of information out there. We're still trying to corral all the ideas, and it's in sort of its process. But this is something that I think on a city level they're aware of, but it's never going to move fast enough for us, right? So in the meantime, how do we be supportive of the community? And I think part of that is holding our representatives' feet to the fire and being present and showing up. And yes, those meetings are long, and they're all being streamed now, but you can sign up for citizens communication. You can be heard. I don't think enough of us take advantage of that, but it really does make an impact to sit on, to speak personally, just to sit on a panel, and with my other commissioners, and to hear voices from the community speak out on these things. Like, we're right there with you, we're boots on the ground, but it definitely helps remind the powers that be that these are all things that are needed drastically, right? Like, we need the support creative space wise. What's happening with that old Sears on 41st, like, let's gut it, let's buy it, let's get in there. Because one thing I want to bring up is, like, I love Canopy, and I think there are certain studios that can accommodate high power, but what about my glass people? What about my smithies, the metals, the wood? We got makers here that span medium, and we need to be aware of that. Not everybody can operate in a clean space. We need fire access, kilns, things that are heavy duty. And I think we forget about those makers when we're like, oh, you need a studio, cool. Well, there's a co-working space down the street that's renting out a room, like Raul was saying. It's like, I can't run a chainsaw in a co-working space. So there's a bigger idea we need to keep in mind when we're talking about, like, what studio space means. It's not just clean space for an easel and a paintbrush. It is room to make a mess.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Selena. I think that's a really good note to end the panel on. And just really, as big takeaways, this idea of being both accountable and an engaged citizen, and letting that be part of what it means to be an artist, but also knowing that at the end of the day, you have this especially supportive community in Austin of people that want to actually genuinely help each other out. Those two dynamics are, I think, really important, and I'm really, really glad that we were able to kind of unearth them and play around more with what it means and all of the different topics that we covered tonight. And for everybody listening, we've got references listed in the info section of the video to all of the different resources and artworks mentioned throughout the panel. And with that, I think we will conclude tonight's panel. I want to thank the panelists again for taking the time and helping me come up with their animated selves. And I want to thank Big Medium for their support and sharing their platform with us tonight. For anybody else that has any questions or comments, know that we'll take tonight's commentary and keep factoring it into our work moving forward, but also always feel free to reach out. And my info is also listed in the info section for the video. So I hope everyone has a good rest of their studio tour experience, and I look forward to what 2021 brings. All right, good night.